KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday 9 a.m. meeting of the BOCC. To get started, if you want to rise, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go over consent agenda. I gotta point out, and I don't mean to embarrass him, but a good friend of mine is here that worked with me for many years at Fiber, Bill Cedergren. He was always enjoyed conversations we had, and it's good to see you here. Thank you. Consent agenda agreements, contracts.
Do you want to do the minutes, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I apologize, Aaron. I almost left you out.
I
know.
felt slighted.
Yeah. Do you feel slighted? Yeah. Sorry, we'll do the minutes. Mr. Mortensen, and welcome on.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments? And I apologize again, once again. Call for the vote in favor.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay, consent agenda. We have another agreement. Public Works has agreements with appraisal companies when they need them to do work on projects they have. The following three items, 2, 3, and 4 are all right-of-way easements and stuff for the project on Air Creek Culvert for that replacement. Under board correspondence, we have a letter out to Jeffrey Curry, appointing him to the Silver Lake Watershed Advisory Council. We have a letter to Gregory Hannon. It's actually reappointing him to the Solid Waste Advisory Council. And we had a letter from Monica Pedersen, Executive Assistant Public Utility District number 1, regarding the PUD's 2024 budget. And basically the letter, when you read through it, just is stating no tax levy required for 2024. And we have vouchers in the amount of $2,230,166.80. Questions on the consent agenda? I see no hands.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Last chance for comments. I see none, and I call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. Motion items, Public Works.
Good morning, everyone. Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. I'm here today to present the bid award for the Install Upgrade Curve Warning Signs project that was opened on September 12th. For this project, we received 6 bids. On review of the paperwork, the second lowest bidder was considered non-responsive for some incomplete paperwork, but the lowest bidder had all the paperwork. This project is funded through the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. This program pays 100% of the construction cost, including the inspection time for the county. We're installing approximately 540 new signs and removing 52 that are located in the wrong locations. So we are requesting to award this project to the lowest bidder. I lost their name. All Stripes LLC for the total amount of $486,700. Sorry about the glitch there.
Just out of curiosity, do you know if they're local or not? Sorry, I'm just curious.
Let me see if I can read the tiny bid tab even with my glasses. They are out of, looks like that says Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Any questions on this bid?
Yeah, yes, Susan, this was the contract that experienced some cost increases and had to get additional money granted from the feds in order to go to this step.
Correct. Last week, we approved additional funding from the feds of $111,700.
If you look at the size of the award, that's a huge cost increase. And you had explained to us in workshop that was because in part, an awful lot of technological changes on the kind of paint, reflective paint that is being used to mark curves and produce signs. That is part of the federal requirement. So the rules they required increased costs. So they followed through with extra money.
Yes, so the retroflectivity on the signs, everything has increased, traffic control, just personnel costs.
Thanks.
As long as we're curious, the bulk of the cost per sign, which is like about $1,000 per sign, something like that, is that labor or materials?
That's labor, the combination of installation and then traffic control on top of it.
Okay, the same materials would be used in Washington State as in Nebraska or Mississippi.
Yes, the signs are a standard put out for them in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which all state, county, and federal agencies, cities use on their roads.
Just a further clarification, elaboration on what Dennis said. I thought I heard 500 new signs. Please clarify. We certainly don't have 500 new curves. So what was that discussion?
So the signs that we're looking at are predominantly, I brought pictures of the chevrons for round curves and then the arrows with the speed warning placards. So in the federal push right now is a lot of safety projects. And so one of our previous safety projects is we went and we drove every road in the county, all 527 miles, with an electronic ball bank system that is connected to GPS. And as you ride around those curves, that system determined what the safe speed was. And you post curve warning signs and speed warning signs when the speed around that curve should be 10 miles per hour less than what the posted speed is. So that's how we determined where new signs were needed or signs needed to be changed.
Well, that's certainly due diligence on our behalf, but it certainly isn't any diligence on the drivers on the road.
I almost can't help myself. I'm thinking the other safety feature is the increase in the price of gasoline, right?
To discourage people from driving, yes.
Thank you.
All right, this is for this company to install these signs.
Yes, it's for them to acquire the materials and install the signs.
All right. Don't we have a county work crews?
We do have county work crews. We have a sign shop that produces and installs and maintains all of our existing signs. This is federal dollars. The federal government, it's very difficult to use federal dollars using your own labor crews. It takes tons of paperwork and I don't know, but this is what it's discouraged. And it goes back to that conversation we had last week when we did the culvert project closeout, where our crews did it. We also have an upper limit on the amount of capital projects that we can do, but all of our sign maintenance is done by our sign crew. We have a 3-person sign crew.
And in the past, we also had WSDOT, Washington State Department of Transportation, do the signs. So they're forbidden to help.
This is the direction that they want us to use contractors. WashDOT crews are very busy and small like ours.
Okay, these are just some clarifications that I wanted. Also, when it comes to these contracts, do you have a cap where they can't come back and say, oh, well, I have a cost overrun and you have to pay this bill? Because that's really not acceptable. We, as a county, accept low, and as any entity does, accept the lower bid. But the lower bid in the long run very often isn't the best for us. There has been a precedent set that there are a few vendors that will underbid mom and pops or whoever else comes to the table. This isn't just about the signs I'm talking about, by the way. I would like to see entertain this very intelligent suggestion that we have a percentage of a cap increase so that we don't have these people that are undercutting, and then in the long run, when they submit their bills for overages, it's well over 5 or 10% of what they originally bid. We need to tighten these type of actions up. It really adds up. So this is what I'm suggesting. Do you have anything like that in this contract?
So on our public works contracts that come through the Public Works Department, any work that is done has to be authorized by the county engineer prior to it occurring. So we look at if there's something, a change condition. Most of our cost increases come from a change condition, such as when we dig down, we find boulders versus a hard pan, or things of that nature tend to be what change on public works projects, or we look at the site and decide that we need to extend the guardrail an extra 10 feet, 20 feet, change the end section. Most of public works department change orders are owner-based requests. Very seldom, we do have some that are cost overruns and underruns. So on a typical project, when we do an estimate, we estimate how much base rock and how much asphalt is going to need, but sometimes tying in the asphalt, you use an extra few tons, or you use a few tons left, so less of rock. So public works projects, we do have small miscellaneous over and underruns. My last public works project that we closed out was the Pacific Avenue North Half Bridge, and we had less than 1% change orders on that project.
Awesome. And this was a shotgun. I'm sorry if you felt like you were under the gun. You're not. This is for all vendors and all departments. I'm asking for a cap where there's no overages. You know, fairness in the marketplace.
So you're actually asking us to make a policy change?
At some given point in time, not right today, but I think it's valid, being that we're going to be under some hard economic.
The only reason I
stances.
mention it is that you were looking at Susan when you were making those demands instead of
Oh, I'm
addressing.
I didn't even see myself anymore.
There
I
you
used
go.
to be a monitor. No, I wanted to make sure that she knew that I wasn't attacking her. This is a shotgun for all of the departments. I want to make sure that there is a cap, that they can't go to, 10, 15, 20% over what they bid. We need to tighten this up. No more games. We're going to go through some hard economic times, being that the state of the world is in right now with gas and everything else going. Thank you, Inslee, for the tax increases. But anyway, that's what I would like for you all to consider. This is the first department that came up, and this is why I brought it up at this time, to have all the contracts have a cap.
Is there an excuse me, is there an expected timeline for this to get done in?
So we'll do the award today. And it's generally 2 or 3 weeks. We'll be back for the contract execution. Then the work starts 2 weeks after that. And I didn't write it down, but there is a contract runtime in all of our contracts that say you have 20 working days, 30 working days. I'm not sure what this is. This is a fairly short time frame once they get out there. Most of these contractors, when we do sign projects, they get in, they get out. The faster they do it, the more money they will make because they spend less on their personnel. If
Yeah.
you would like me to, I can send you the timeline on it.
I'm just curious if there was something written into the contract that
Yeah.
says we expect this to be done within the next 60 days or whatever.
Yes.
So are there allowances for such things as weather conditions if all of a sudden we have a typhoon free to come through this area?
Yes, so Public Works, outdoor Public Works contracts, we have a number of working days. And there is written into the specifications that we count rain days as non-working days. So if we had a typhoon and they couldn't work for a week, that whole week wouldn't count as working days. So instead of having 5 working days that week, they'd have 0. So they're not penalized for typhoons and snowstorms and things that they can't control.
Okay, thank you.
It is always amazing to me when we have the contracts, we sign the contracts. And the number of pages of all the kinds of details to try to anticipate all the exceptions they run enormous and, 120 pages. And they're all online. So if you want to get into the weeds, they are on the website. So, but you have to dig, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're on the purchasing website. If you go into purchasing and contracts, they are all posted there.
I think we keep them in the commissioner's office for a while. If you ever go in there and you see these stacks of things like this, that's a contract and it's there for public view.
And the Public Works office always has ours available for public view also.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award to All Stripes LLC as has been presented by staff.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor. Any last questions, comments? I see none. I see no hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Also vote aye. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Building and planning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. In front of you today, it's a county-wide comprehensive flood management plan. It's a collaborative project that the county led with assistance from many cities, diking districts, restoration specialists, community leaders, and emergency responders. We were awarded this contract from Department of Ecology. We were awarded $231,375. And with me today, I have Adam Trimble, my senior planner, and Larry Hembry, from a director from emergency management, to go over the plan that we'd like to place on file with the board today. And yesterday when I workshopped this with the board asked me what extra burdens this would be on landowners. And besides better technology, what else can the homeowners expect? And what hoops would the citizens now have to endure with this new plan? So we've addressed those concerns and we're here to talk about them.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Director Jackson. So as she just said, we've got a few responses to concerns about what this plan might or might not do for the residents and landowners. One thing I'd like to start out with is that question, what extra burden will this put on landowners? And I want to say that this plan is not a regulation. It's a plan that calls for preparedness, public awareness, and coordination of government actions to mitigate flood hazards. It doesn't place burdens on any current development projects or private ownerships. The goal here is to help guide emergency preparedness efforts of county and local governments related to flood hazards from the many rivers, streams, drainages, and flood control areas. This in turn can help the county and local governments and citizens reduce exposure to loss of life, property, infrastructure, and habitat from floods. So that, I just wanted to get out there right away that the plan is really about that emergency preparedness, avoiding hazards, preparing for those kind of increases in risk from flooding. The other aspect we want to address is the plan provides some new technological tools, data and mapping, which the residents of the county may be able to use to determine if they're in a flood prone area. So if there's any doubt, what we received as part of this plan was a higher resolution of information about where flood hazards exist. So FEMA provides mapping and it's current as of 2015. Well, we now have a new data set informed by all the latest LiDAR ground mapping data, and it can give a more precise readout on whether your project is in or out of a floodplain. And that certainty could help you avoid the cost of a surveyor. So whereas our 2015 data leaves some question and it's not very precise, and we're going to default to use a surveyor to confirm, our new tool should give that better precision and could help some people avoid that added cost. But aside from that technological tool, the plan does check boxes necessary for the county or cities like Woodland, for example, to participate in something called the community rating system. This is a FEMA program that essentially, if the government participates in it, then the residents who are paying for flood insurance can receive a discount on their flood insurance policy through FEMA. It amounts to about $50 discount on a premium. And that premium is likely going to go up over the years. And so that there is that kind of opportunity with this plan, having checked 9 out of those 10 boxes to for a government to participate in community rating system and then qualify for those discounts for residents. Another point we'd like to make about this plan is that the public works, diking districts, cities, the county and ports, many others are going to be better equipped to solicit federal dollars to work on mitigation projects that can reduce the risks to citizens and their properties and their businesses and our overall economy. Our consultant, Rob Flainer, would frequently say that this plan is a key way to funding, that there's funding sources like FEMA that may require a jurisdiction to have this plan on file before you can apply. And so having it opens up those opportunities, and it is a countywide plan. So the cities can participate, they can adopt this plan and use it to support their requests. Diking districts likewise can adopt the plan and use it to support their requests. At our first progress report meeting yesterday, we had agencies and representatives from the community discuss 8 different funding opportunities that they're currently looking into to address flood risks in our area. So this is work that's already going on, and with this plan, we have that support for that work to prepare for the worst. One last thing that we wanted to address is, will the plan put up additional hoops for citizens in the county to go through with whatever they're doing? So what I would say is that citizens can expect more public service announcements related to flood prevention. And since it's primarily focused on preparedness, citizens can expect their governments to coordinate better so that when a diking district is replacing a pump or going out for emergency backup power, we're talking to each other. There's multiple diking districts in the county. There's opportunities for us to combine our funding requests or at least coordinate so that equipment is interoperable or equipment can be mobile and be shared in case of an emergency. So I think that's one thing that citizens can expect, but it is primarily focused on government actions, and I want to make that clear. And Larry's here to kind of back up that emergency preparedness. Larry Hembry, Department of Emergency Management Director, is with us. And if you have anything to add or something I missed, please jump in.
No, the only thing I'd like to add, commissioners, is that when we first brought this to 2 of you, that you expressed some concerns and we took those into account throughout the entire process. I call this a straight-faced test where I come before you today saying that we truly reached out to the county. We reached out to private citizens, to civic groups, subject matter experts from throughout the county. We turned over a lot of different rocks to look at this at a lot of different angles. And from my, excuse me, from my perspective, in the past 18 months, we have done our due diligence to try and present to you today a plan that is comprehensive in nature and is something that is definitely workable throughout the county.
I'll give you some comments on it and I'm not trying to phrase this real carefully. You guys happen to be sitting at the table. I'm not picking on anybody, but I looked through this the other day. And chapter 12, it has 11 pages of policy guidance. Chapter 13, it has 10 pages of mitigation actions. And chapter 10 that precedes those is they base a lot of this plan off climate change, temperature change and carbon dioxide change, which there's no, the science on that is suspect in a lot of cases, a lot of stuff. So you got a plan and I'm going to disagree with you. When we do a comprehensive plan for building, it bleeds down into what people can do with their property, how they have to apply for permits and do that. So if you have this comprehensive plan and then you have pages of policy guidance and mitigation actions, to tell me it's not going to bleed down to how the citizens can interact with their property, I'm probably not going to agree with you on that. It will, because I've seen it over and over and over. And here we got a plan built on what I would call suspect science that we're taking as fact that we're having climate change and we're having all this. I'm going to read you a portion of an article. A lot of times this kind of stuff is put in, they have limited, not all scientists agree, but they state it as fact and they use it as a purpose for imposing action on you. This is from Newsweek, April 28th, 1975. And I'll do a little bit on there and see if any of this sounds familiar. There are ominous signs that the Earth's weather patterns have begun to change dramatically and that these changes may portend a drastic decline in food production with serious political indications for just about every nation on Earth. The drop in food output could begin quite soon, perhaps only 10 years from now. The regions destined to feel its impact are the great wheat producing lands of Canada and the USSR in the north, along with a number of marginally self-sufficient tropical areas, parts of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indochina, and Indonesia, where the growing season is dependent upon the rains brought by the monsoon. The evidence in support of these predictions has now begun to accumulate so massively that meteorologists are hard pressed to keep up with it. What do you think they're talking about here? They're talking about cooling. The Earth was cooling. I have another article that says we're headed toward an ice age. Now, did any of that happen? Are we out of food? Are farmers not? This is just an example of this kind of stuff where they use this to, we're probably still dealing, I would guess we're still dealing with laws and rules and regulations from 1975 when they told us the Earth was cooling and we're going to be in dire straits. So I have issues with this kind of stuff. I don't mind the technology and I don't mind the help to the people, but when we base 11 pages of policy guidelines and 10 pages of mitigation actions on what I would say unfounded science and just things they take as fact, I don't see how we can do that to the public. I don't even know how you feel right doing that to the public when it's. I have a problem with that, obviously. So, and you can go back. This is from 75. You can go back to eras and all kinds of things. And there's all kinds, according to Al Gore, the earth should have been, the earth should be gone by now. It should have been burned up by 2020. Well, this kind of nonsense, in May 18th, 1980, I was in Vancouver. I watched that mountain go. I watched all the floods. I watched the houses float down. And I listened to him tell us that it will take 100 years to restore anything up there. It hasn't been 100 years yet. We still have stuff going. The hubris of man to think that we can destroy Mother Earth is just beyond comprehension. She'll shake us off like a dog shakes off water and then heal herself and go on. We can destroy ourselves, but to think that we have all this power I just can't accept something that's just based on, and I know where it will head. It'll head towards restrictions on people. It's just what it does. So I don't know how we address that. But that's my concerns with it.
Would you like some help on the science aspect of it? I'll go ahead anyhow. I spent 6.5 years at graduate school at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. They were essentially the home of the concept of climate change because of greenhouse. The gases, and that came from Roger Gravel, one of the earlier UCSD professors. And I can tell you, I've seen any number of times where the driving factor is the dollar. Most of those professors have a job as long as they have the grants. And it's a dog-eat-dog world there. You don't get the grant, you're out. And while you would hope that a professor would be forthcoming in all these issues, there would never be an instance where Professor A tells Professor B, you know, I got the grant, but clearly what you're doing is much more important, so I'm going to give you my grant. That won't ever happen. So, and funding doesn't occur at the hands of what I would call scientifically well-versed people. There are no Oppenheimers there. It's a bunch of bureaucrats in DC, and if there's a crisis, they're going to jump on that and make hay while that happens. And there are all kinds of specific scientific things we could talk about. So I'm saying I agree with the chairman. Any policies involving this, well, I'll go one more step. You've heard the word modeling. Most of the predictions have been based on models. Well, I did a little modeling for my dissertation, and depending on what answer I was interested in, I could make the model behave by simply tweaking some almost inconsequential things. And when I say inconsequential, I just want people to understand modeling is computers. And if you think adding 100 numbers together will always give you the same answer, independent of the order of the addition, that doesn't happen on a computer. It's different there. And anyhow, just to tell you, the models to date have been what? Notoriously unreliable. Is that a fair enough statement? And we can't condemn people to what I think really amounts to general human suicide to follow some of the policies. But anyhow, off my soapbox there. I do have other questions, but maybe.
The one of the things that the chairman mentioned is that he appreciates and values the technology that can help to inform property owners and property locations. And I think we have to figure out a way to make sure we have those kinds of advantages available. But, you know, the assumption was no real negative impacts other than public information and preparedness, which is fine. I'm thinking that probably what needs to happen to preserve what is good about the plan is a referral back to your advisory committee to see, you know, what can we eliminate or describe as advisory to assure people that, you know, they're not going to be regulated to death, because I think that's really true. The other thing that was in the report was the fact that many other levels of government are working on projects. And part of it was on the assumption that we would approve the regulation today. We need to let them know and make sure that they have an opportunity to respond. I'm not at all, I don't know what those projects are, but I think it would be precipitous for us to not ask staff to go back and revise it according to the concerns that have been expressed. Since I'm assuming it's not going to pass today if we had it for a vote to pass. So with that in mind, I think I would like to make the motion that we refer this back to staff to rework it, to address the concerns that this board has expressed in order to preserve those areas that are good and helpful and positive for safety and flood preparation or flood hazard.
In that respect, we're completely free to, I mean, our staff is completely free to take what's there, take out all the stuff that's objectionable, and we have our own plan, like preparedness is a useful conflict, and plans, and as much as I think it's very difficult to have a survivable plan, if it's there, you're right. So I think your suggestion would suit me. So I did want to say, I think I've seen a lot of documents and plans, and very often the content seems to be there to aid what we fear. Essentially, they're buying our vote to adopt climate change. And this is the way they do it, by saying well, you can't have funding unless you have the climate change impact, equity, justice, and you name any other things. And we should try not to allow ourselves to be blackmailed into that.
I would prefer we not get blackmailed. When this first came up, I was sitting on that side, and when I first heard it, I just thought, well, it sounded like they're trying to do what Commissioner Ward was talking about, make it easier for people and do those type of things. And then I heard that that the Department of Ecology was going to be involved. So I got up and I sat there where Tracy was sitting, and I said, and my concern was, once you involve the Department of Ecology, you don't think they're going to make you dot every I and every T that they want, then you're dreaming. And that's exactly what happened. And they entice you with, well, this plan, you're now, I sit in the planning commission when this was brought up, and all the guy talked about, and I forget the name that you from the agency that put this together. All he talked about was all the grants that you could now get because of the documentation you had in this. And it's just buying, you're just, in my view, you're just selling your people for money. And I'm not selling the residents of Cowlitz County for money. They have a right to, you got to remember, my view of government is we're here to protect the public. We're here to make sure the public their rights are intact. We're not here to tell them what to, I had in no way, shape or form do I want to sit here and put a thumbnail on them and say, you got to do this, it's not our job. our job here is to protect our rights, and that's my constitutional view of it. And when I see these type of things, we're just setting them up to just tighten the screws down and take more away. And I would prefer, if we need a document that really helps emergency management, then let's create one. But all this other fluff with all their pages of mitigation actions and whatever needs to not be part of it.
So a question, does anybody know the answer to what happens if we're impacted? I mean, what happens if we don't approve this other than,
That was a question. I don't know if it's like state building codes. We don't have to approve it, but we have to enforce it. I don't know.
I don't have the answer for that, commissioners. I'll work on that as well.
Good morning. I want to commend you for being the first public official that I've heard stand up and call bullshit. If we didn't learn this with the whole Fauci and the COVID thing, we're all brain dead. I'm old enough to remember, let's see, I think it was The Sky is Falling when I was in school. That stuck with me forever. And of course, when I left Weyerhaeuser, there was, let's see, that was when Jimmy Carter was in office. The world was cooling and he was wearing a sweater. And when I left there in 1999, there was still a sign on one of the doors, something about turning down the thermostat because the earth is cooling, something to that effect. Well, then the next thing was that didn't work. So now it was global warming. And when that didn't work, now the climate is changing. And I support your view that if we think that we are powerful enough to control the climate on the earth, there's something wrong with all of us. Yeah, we got a lot of things we should do better in terms of pollution and all that kind of stuff, but this bigger overall trying to drive policy by stuff that's been debunked by thousands of scientists over the few noisy ones. And we got a press that we can't depend on to get the word out to people. So congratulations. That's exactly the stands that we need to be taking in local government.
We have a motion. We need to address that. Commissioner Weber put a motion that they take back and do the focus group and look at this. So don't see any questions or something. You have any questions, concerns on that motion?
I guess I'd like to clarify a couple of things. I can't tell you, I probably have over a dozen climate change books and going through everything and how much the science regarding this has been politicized is astronomical. I want to clarify that. First of all, climate change is real. Man-made climate change is a joke. All the numbers from even some of the most liberal money grubbing after grant money scientists at least acknowledge that man-made carbon dioxide, if in fact carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and there's some arguments about that. Man-made carbon dioxide at most ranges to 4%. Most studies put it around 2%. If you shut off 100% of what man-made carbon dioxide is, 96 to 98% of it would still be going into the atmosphere from Mother Nature. We don't make 100% of the carbon dioxide. So on that part of that, if you recognize that man-made carbon dioxide, which is what everybody seems so damn focused on, it's less than 4% of what's going into the atmosphere to affect the atmosphere. Climate change has been going on for millions of years as the earth changes and goes through its cycles. 100,000 years ago, if you look at core samples taken out of the Antarctica and out of the poles that go back 800,000 years, about every 100,000 years, the carbon dioxide numbers shoot through the roof. They go sky high. And all of a sudden they drop back down to very low numbers. And as I went through this whole argument with a very unhappy son, who's a very greenhouse or very green, happy researcher, 100,000 years ago, when the carbon dioxide shot through the roof, what caused it to happen? Because there was nobody here driving cars. There was nobody here burning oil. There was nobody here shoveling coal into a steam engine somewhere. None of that was going on. And more important than what made it go sky high 100,000 years ago, what made it suddenly disappear? What made it go away? Because man wasn't here with a big filter cleaning the air.
I got that article too, Forbes, May 26, 2003. French, team of French-led scientists went into Antarctic ice core samples, just what you're talking about, found the same thing.
40 years ago, I was a PUD commissioner in this county, and I attended seminars, a lot of seminars regarding the coming ice age, just what you were talking about earlier, and how we needed to prepare for famine, the loss of the food production in the breadbasket of the world, how we were all going to be starving to death. Disease was going to run rampant because of the lack of food, and then the disease from people dying from starvation, and the need for energy to try and keep us warm. All of that stuff that was supposed to have happened before the year 2000, none of those things came into reality. When in fact, man has figured out how to, in research and development, improve our food production to feed the world, to have more food than what we need to feed the world. And we've stayed ahead of those things. Research and development is a step ahead on need. Climate change has become a financial resource where everybody goes after a handful of money. The International Climate Change Committee had some world-renowned scientists on that committee who were all on the side of climate change is not a real risk. There's not something happening there that we can control. All of a sudden, all those scientists got displaced by and removed and replaced by fresh out of college, I got a degree, I'm a scientist. People who would stand up and in their computer modeling, they created situations where it says that the earth is going to get warmer by 1.5 to 2 degrees every year. We're going to be burning up in 10 to 12 years. AOC screaming and yelling how we were going to be gone in 12 years if we didn't fix it. Those numbers are computer generated numbers that, like Arn mentioned earlier, by tweaking those algorithms, you can make it say any damn thing you want. None of them have been accurate. None of them have been able to work forwards and backwards and explain the climate. The closest thing that anybody's got is the solar cycles that develop and protect the earth from the solar flares and how all of that system works. So I would say if we're building some type of a program based on the current information for climate change, it's a bad foundation. There's no scientific basis that climate change is going to suddenly toss us into the frying pan or freeze us to death.
Yeah.
It's not there. Anyway,
Okay.
thank
We
you.
got any other questions on the motion? I got a motion to deal with here.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. We have a gentleman here on the.
Hopefully this is a question on the motion. You mentioned that your job is to protect citizens' rights. I would hope that that also includes my right to live in a healthy environment. Not just my right to do whatever the hell I want with my property, my lifestyle. The public good is something you should value, not solely private rights. Your views that we humans could not affect global climate might stem from maybe an illustration you saw in high school where the earth in your biology book is this big and the layers of the atmosphere extend out, right? They show all the layers of the atmosphere, but it's not to scale. Our earth is 8,000 miles in diameter, right? If we took that that example and made it into 12 inches, Commissioner Dahl, how thick would the atmosphere be around that 12-inch globe? The thickness of a dime.
Okay.
To suggest that we can't affect with our current way of living that thin skin around our globe is a little silly.
But we'll probably have to disagree.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we on the motion? Okay.
It's not climate change. What you're getting at is you want it to go back towards what I'm concerned about is preparedness for seasonal downspouts. And for possibility of a dam failure. If one dam failed, it's a chain reaction. And my concerns would be preparedness for that. And also dams can fail because of too much water behind them. These are the types of things that the lowlands have to be wary of and know that there is an action plan for. Also evacuation routes for now and in the future. And I'm willing to set up, Ernie, want me to attend a meeting and give you some input, I'm willing to do it. Let me know when. And this is answering your motion. And these are, I'm assuming, the core of what you expected to see in the comprehensive plan for flooding, correct? These are some of the issues you wanted to see.
I'm always reluctant to correct public testimony, but Ernie retired. That's Larry.
Oh, Larry, thank you. I don't know name
Okay.
tag, eyesight, bad. Thank you, Weber. Okay, I only met you once when we did the citizens thing and I toured your office. You were awesome. You've got a good man here. He also said, and this is be a good thing to bring up in preparedness, that when they tell you to prepare for 1 week, go out further, prepare longer, because our help is coming from the opposite coast. And if they're preoccupied, they're not coming to help us. So we need to be prepared on our own here.
Regarding the motion is that we do know that man has tried to control flooding by putting all the water into lined streams, et cetera, and flooding is automatic. It has to occur to handle the problem. So your flood control plan certainly needs to recognize that flooding is inevitable, as nature put it here, and that we live in a floodplain right here in Longview. So anyway, people living with that need to be aware of that and live with that. And that's part of the flood awareness plan. flooding and rains are natural.
Okay. We have a motion. I see no other hands. I'd call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. So I apologize, we gave you a little more work to do. But I think our intentions are really just to have an emergency plan that really works for our county. And I know you have evacuation routes and you have all that stuff in place. But anyway, I'll just leave it there.
Thank you.
Okay,
We'll
thank
have our
you.
direction. Thank you.
And from the last motion item from the commissioner's office. We have a resolution, the Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners having recognized the unalienable right of the people of Cowlitz County to bear arms as being infringed by state and federal agencies. The Board of County Commissioners declares that it supports the constitutional challenges of Gators Guns, Custom Guns Inc. as to any state law infringing on the rights to bear arms. Anybody want to speak on that? Do we have copies of it out there? Has anybody seen it?
Commissioners, I would like to give you guys congratulations for saying enough is enough with the sheer stupidity of our state government. But I think we even need to make that resolution even stronger and tell Comrade Inslee and Ferguson and the Democratic comrade leaders, tell them to take 1240 and 59 and stick it where the sun doesn't shine and make a law in this county to reverse their decision-making because of the fact that section 24 of our state constitution and the amendment, the Bill of Rights, number 2, give us that right that you guys are we're talking about. So I think it even needs to be strongly stated to them in the capital that enough is enough. And make this a resolution to make it a law in this county to restore our Second Amendment and 24th section rights and tell those comrades where to go.
It's I don't mind reading through it if you want to listen to me read through this, but it was drafted and actually signed off on by legal. They reviewed this. So I'll run through this, so just bear with me. Whereas the state and federal constitutions were written to be read and interpreted by the people and to constrain the actions and overreach of government. And whereas local Gators Guns Company, Custom Guns Inc. filed action against the state of Washington over a regulatory investigation and challenge to the constitutionality of ESSB 5078 on the right to bear arms. The Cowlitz County Superior Court number 23-2-00826-08. And whereas the state of Washington responded to the filing by local Gators Custom Guns Inc. by filing an enforcement action against Gators under Cowlitz County Superior Court number 23-2-00897-08, seeking civil penalties and seizures of money and properties from Gators as a penalty for violations arising under this law. And whereas the state claims as justification for its actions, a U.S. Eastern District of Washington Court ruling number 1:22-CV-03093, claiming the court rejected a constitutional challenge of these laws, when in fact that court has rejected only the sufficiency of a firearms seller plaintiff request for preliminary injunction, all while writing their claim plainly raises serious questions as to ESSB 5078's constitutionality, particularly in light of the uncertainty of Second Amendment jurisprudence, and that the Second Amendment right is not a second-class right, citing to the Supreme Court ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. And whereas a federal court in Duncan versus Bonta, I hope that's right, District Court, SD of California, number 17-01017, recently rejected a similar California law, having previously been overturned by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in so ruling, only to have the Supreme Court reject the Ninth Circuit and remand to the District Court in light of Bruin to rule once again. And whereas the Second Amendment to the Federal Constitution in Article 1, Section 24 of the state constitution prohibit infringement of rights to bear arms, and that actions by the state at this time to punish and penalize Gators Custom Guns Inc. based upon constitutionally questioned and suspect laws and regulations bears witness to a heavy-handed application of authority by those currently empowered to wield the same in state's name. And whereas this Board of County Commissioners is tasked with defending the citizens of this county for unreasonable actions and overreach by another government agency, now therefore the Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners does not and will not condone or support any regulations or governmental actions that violate the constitutional rights of citizens to keep and bear arms, and the BOCC condemns any action that seeks to utilize the enormous power and resources of state government derived from taxpayer monies, which would violate the constitutional rights of citizens to keep and bear arms. I haven't read that much since school.
Good job.
Couple of weeks ago, the Board of Health had a new member. And I recall the oath of office that she stated. I couldn't find the oath of office for county commissioners. Don't know if it's the same. Thank you. It mentioned, can't remember exact wording, but Washington state law was definitely included in that oath, that you would respect or that you would uphold Washington state law. Did Gators gun violate Washington state law? I think that's yes, right? Right?
So the real issue is, and as the resolution points up, there is still a question as to the constitutionality of that state law.
Well,
And that brings into challenge that the statement in the oath, because it's not only upholding state law, the state constitution, but the federal law and the federal constitution.
yes.
And so that leaves us our First Amendment rights to say, stop. That's all. And we're not passing a law. We're not changing county code because our legal authorities have told us we can't really supplant that. But we can certainly express our concern at the heavy hand of the state to do what they may be doing under the guise of a non-constitutional state law.
I'd like to add,
And that state law was voted on by the public, correct?
You're unfamiliar with the Kentucky resolutions or the Whiskey
Yes, I am.
Rebellion. And any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is not law at all.
Well, this resolution started off with, we the people interpret the Constitution. I know you've told me before that you think it's each individual that determines the interpretation of the Constitution. Well, that's nothing but chaos. Our system in the United States is for our courts to determine the constitutionality of a law. Excuse me. Yeah, you might not agree with it, but that's how it works. And
And I would agree with you. Ultimately, that is true. I mean, they end up under our system, the courts have supreme law of the land. That has not been decided yet. And I think that's what the point of the resolution is. We're taking a stand, exercising our First Amendment rights to share our disagreements. But of course, if the 9 robed individuals in Washington DC come down and say it is constitutional, that puts a limit to it.
So this law has not been challenged in court?
It is, I think it's in the process of being challenged, but the court cases that he cited was simply, I think the status is it's remanded back. So it's not really a done deal.
Thank you.
I guess this is kind of a pet peeve for me. I'm not a gun person. I haven't shot a gun for years. But the Constitution is pretty clear as far as your rights to bear arms. In the federal Constitution, it says that it shall not be infringed. In the state, Article 6, it says the mode of that's the wrong one. Anyway, in the state constitution, it says that it shall not be impaired. Now, I didn't know exactly what impaired means, so I looked it up in the dictionary, and it says will not make it less. In other words, your right to bear arms shall not be impaired means that it will not be made less than what it would be. We have people that have magazines of 30 rounds that's been purchased in the past. What the state Supreme Court has said that that they can restrict you from having a matching capability because those magazines can't be sold that are over 10 rounds. I don't understand how a person can say it's up to the Supreme Court or whatever, when the 5th article of the United States Constitution says the only way that you can make an adjustment to the Constitution is by the state legislatures. And it takes 3/4 of the state legislatures to make any changes. So I know that the Supreme Court is there for a reason and they can make determinations, but I see no place that they make a determination unless they're before a case. And if that case hasn't come to the Supreme Court, they can't make a decision. And if they do, it pertains to that case. And if it's a foul ruling, then they got a foul ruling, but it only pertains to that case. That's my understanding of it. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And anything that's contrary to it has no standing. I just don't understand how we get run away on these things, except that as we have vetted different candidates, find out that the bulk of them do not understand the Constitution. They want to have office, but they don't want to read the Constitution so that they can understand that. It is the supreme law. It belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the courts. It belongs to the people. I just lack understanding and why people want to run for office and not, first of all, understand what they're getting into.
Thank you for exercising your First Amendment and making your statement on this resolution. I think it's well written, and I appreciate you looking out for the rest of us at the end. It's not just Gators, you're looking out for the First and the Second Amendment for all of your constituents. Very good, gentlemen. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could comment.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult things to deal with is this mythical concept of the public good. And I would recommend if people are confused by that, that they look up Thomas Sowell and read him and many others like him who would discuss exactly how public good actually manifests itself in the degradation of our laws. But that's a different, well, it's a parallel issue. We are a republic. We are not a democracy. And as a republic, we have the constitutions, both the federal and the state constitution. And if we want to play around with that, like I've recommended to Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein when I was in California. I'm not going to argue with you about whether guns are good or bad or anything like that, but there is a process by which you can go through and overturn the Constitution with an amendment or overturn that aspect of the Constitution. If we remain with the concept that that we cannot judge for ourselves a law, there would be no United States. I mean, John Adams tried as hard as he could to live and abide by the regulations of the king, and it just didn't work out. And so our history is written there based on justice, not people per se. As George Washington said, I don't want a third term. We fought not to have a King George. You don't want another King George. I think it was the rebellion in Athens, Georgia, that's right after World War II. There was a municipality that was doing things legally, but the people could not accept it because it was not legal by principle. Let's see, it was Robert Bork, the justice, who was interviewed after he was rejected. I think it was after he was rejected for Supreme Court. He said that in the last 100 years, he figured just about all of the mandates of the or decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States were illegitimate. Now, if we take that into account, we realize, which should be pretty obvious to anybody now, that the courts are, unlike what they're supposed to be, they're a political entity. And it's just one of those things where you've got conflicting interests out there. So you as the individual have to decide for yourself, what does infringe mean? If the law is passed that all people that wear hats to meetings should be executed, are we going to do it and then discuss afterwards the impact? I mean, the propositions that were suggested were just preposterous in my book.
So
would you like a motion? Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the resolution on Gators guns as has been discussed.
okay, we have a motion.
I just wanted to add that I do support you guys. I really appreciate this. Arn just nailed my thoughts exactly. This is the constitutional test for the magazine ban. And you know, Gators basically had to sell them or buy the magazines or whatever to violate the said law in order to get standing in court to challenge it constitutionally. And so that's exactly what's happening here. And if the Second Amendment doesn't protect magazines, the First Amendment doesn't protect pen and paper. I mean, the Second Amendment, it wasn't, I don't know, I'm speaking to the choir here, but it doesn't grant us anything, doesn't give us anything. It doesn't create the right. All it does is enshrine that we are born with the right. We have the natural right of self-defense, not against just
personal violence, but we should be on the same level field as tyrants, which is exactly what was in mind when it was designed. So appreciate the support and I support it.
Any other? See no hands. I see nobody approach. We have a motion. I call for a vote. Those in favor?
I,
Also vote aye. Thank you. Okay, that's end of our motion items. Before I turn it over for just open public comment, just a reminder, this afternoon at 1:30, we're continuing with budget workshops. We also have Habitat for Humanity in. We had them in, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and we're talking with them again about just funding different things that we might be able to work together with on. So they'll be in today at 1:30. We have no meeting tomorrow, Wednesday. There's no meeting tomorrow. That was the second Wednesday of the month is a 5:30 PM meeting. We have had no departments come in and put anything on there, so there's no meeting tomorrow. And with that, you guys have the floor.
I have a proposal, if you would be so kind to listen to it for a resolution, and if you wanted to adopt something similar, it would be awesome because it's floating around. There's a resolution to oppose the reinstatement of mandates regarding citizens' personal decisions regarding health. Whereas there's been discussions among other political entities about reinstating mask mandates along with testing and mask wearing. Whereas the people of Cowlitz County and Washington State have a constitutional right to make their own healthcare decisions. And whereas the mask, test, and vaccine and social mandates in 2021 and in 2022 have had devastating, far-reaching, and long-lasting impact on virtually every aspect of our lives and our livelihood, including the health and well-being of children. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Cowlitz County opposes any attempt by federal, state, and or local governments to reinstate mandates regarding citizens' personal health decisions, including those pertinent to masking, testing, vaccination, and social restrictions. Do you take this under consideration?
Board of Health is working on a similar thing. I don't know where that's gonna end up.
I don't want it. I do not want anything coming from the Board of Health. I don't trust the Board of Health. After all this that we've been through, and we have ruined businesses and everything else that has happened, this should be a personal God-given choice as to what to do. You're afraid of the big bad bug, then stay home. Quarantine those who are sick, not those who are healthy. Don't ruin businesses.
Yeah, I'll try better to convey what was presented by Board of Health was actually very similar to that, probably even more extensive. And they've been asked to, by legal, and correct me, my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, asked by legal to make some adjustments, but I think the final product is going to read very, very, very similar.
No mask,
So-
no tests, no vaccine, no social distancing. None of these restrictions through our life that we've had for the last 3 years.
I guess
So
what I'm trying to tell
maybe
you.
I can, maybe
Yeah.
I might be able to clear up some misunderstanding. When the chairman talked about the Board of Health, he was talking about the Cowlitz County Board of Health, and you might have been thinking the State Board of Health, which made those mandates and regulations. And
We don't have our own Board of Health. We have Clark County.
No, we have our own Board of Health. We meet every month, just about every month. Yeah.
It's the same
And it
people
was
from Clark
expanded.
County.
It was expanded.
No,
to
no,
include
you're thinking the health officer.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm thinking Clark County Board of Health.
Mm.
And do we have our own in-house Board of Health?
Yeah,
Do we?
yeah, the three of us sit on it and then there's one,
Three
two,
additional.
three,
Four. We have four.
four citizens.
Yeah, for citizens.
Well, I think this goes beyond Constitution. This is God-given. This goes way back to the first letter that our founding fathers ever wrote.
Yeah.
The Declaration. And I am opposed to anything that's going to restrict our free movement. The answer to that, and I'm sure I've got other people behind me, is no. I'm looking forward to seeing the resolution.
Anything else? Anything else from my colleagues? Okay. Oh,
I can't give up on it. One of the things on our previous conversation about climate change that I would like to mention is the fact that the United States has some of the cleanest air quality standards in the world. There are other countries who don't even come close, but our country stands very high on the list of the cleanest air quality standards in the world. And to jeopardize our way of life based on politicized science, especially given people like Elon Musk and people who are inventors and creators and help advance mankind. The progress from the industrialized age to where we stand today has brought mankind so far forward, brought the entire world so far forward in a very limited number of years that to ignore the fact that we've done such great things and that this nation stands first and foremost to represent high quality standards, to jeopardize our way of life and to destroy our energy basis is sheer foolishness.
Steve, you and I think were elected officials around about the same time back in the 80s, 40 years ago, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And for those of you who were here even earlier, growing up in the 50s and 60s, that was a time when we knew we could predict the weather by smelling the air because of the pollution. And we were always cautioned, don't go swimming in the Columbia River because those big, all those suds that were flowing down the river from the paper mills were not healthy. And we just simply don't see that kind of pollution anymore. And it's been wonderful to see that transformation. But the companies have to keep on top of the technology to make sure they don't commit the violations. And, you know, we just read that one of the paper mills did have a fine because something broke down in that whole process. So I think those are examples where eliminating pollution is good. That's, in my way of thinking, is a heck of a lot different than putting it all on climate change, which has been going around, you know, for eons. So
it's
nope, anti-pollution laws
it
can't be overdone, but I think
Smokestack industry went away. I mean, you can remember the black smoke pouring out of the smokestacks before they put in precipitators and they had to clean the air. I can remember fishing in the Columbia River where if you had your fishing line in the water more than about 15 or 20 minutes, you had so much debris gather up on the line that your weight couldn't hold it on the bottom anymore. You had to reel it in and clean all the crap off your line coming out of the mills. And then you could put it back in the water again. Now, the water's a hell of a lot cleaner than it was, especially even 20 years ago. The air's a lot cleaner than it was 40 years ago by far.
We just keep having to figure out how to take care of all the sediment that's continuing to come down from the mountain. 40 years isn't all that long in geology.
Right.
I don't don't think anybody's opposed to paying attention and improving things. That sometimes the difficult point is where does it tip to where it becomes overreach and it becomes more about control than it does about actually fixing problems. And those are some of that's a little bit what I had issue with today is I think you're crossing over that tipping point beyond it becomes more about control and money than it does about actually fixing what we need fixed.
Right. And the other thing is I'd like to say, yes, I support your resolution for Gators Guns. Thank you very much for taking a position on that. I appreciate it very much. And I believe in the Constitution and I believe in our God-given rights and that the Constitution is only there to specifically protect those rights. And the interpretation often lies in the Supreme Court, which has become very politicized back and forth many times, but the Supreme Court ultimately decides, is it constitutional or not? And the Constitution is there to protect those rights. It doesn't grant us rights, it protects us rights. Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
if I could play a little off of that. Back in the 50s is my colleague mentioned, you could tell a lot. I don't know if you could tell whether the weather was going to change, but you certainly knew that you were getting the pollution out of the LA basin into the down by the San Bernardino area. And what failed there is that the price of gasoline did not include the price of cleaning the air. So we were doing like we do now, where we have a $33 trillion debt there. We're pushing things off. And in that case, I don't know what other mechanism other than the EPA coming in and saying, you can't do this. Now, if they had properly priced it, we wouldn't have had such a catastrophe, but it's difficult to price things. And so that's a worthwhile discussion. The other issue.
Commissioner Mortensen, I know you represent us on the Clean Air Agency, and you mentioned not too long ago how that agency does a wonderful job of implementing the regulations that they're in charge of. That whole issue of air pollution, I think you probably know that today, under today's rules and regulations, there is more air pollution caused by cars idling at drive-ins and at stop signs and stoplights than from big business. It's just that big business, it's all concentrated and you can see it a lot easier. I will never forget the conference I went to once in Los Angeles over a weekend. And Monday morning, and it was beautiful, blue skies, it was just gorgeous. Hard to sit in those meetings when you could play outside, but nevertheless, we left Monday morning to the airport to come back home. And our eyes were burning because just in that morning, the smog was so horrendous that it was painful. And that's the kind of pollution that absolutely needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
And I think they've done some improvements, but it also seems like they keep building freeways. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting in that case, the LA area was a great producer of smog, but as long as you had the onshore breeze, it would blow it into the San Bernardino Valley. And so everybody in LA was happy campers. And that's precisely the problem of trying to identify the cause. When you say protecting individual rights, that does mean I can have in my house the peace of knowing that there's not a lead smelter next door that's going to kill me. And then my other comment was on climate change. We forget that, say in July in Nome, Alaska versus January in Nome, Alaska, there's probably as much as 100 degrees Fahrenheit change in temperature. And that happens over a 6-month period of time. And if you think about that, there's a little truth in almost everything. Do we pollute? Yes. Does that have an impact? Yes. I spit in the ocean. Does that raise the level of the ocean? Yes. But is it important? When you look at the gnome and the seasonal change, you see that the big guy in the room is the sun, and it has a monumental impact. You can take a blind man from shadow to sun, and he'll tell you immediately, we just stepped into the sun. So it's a relative prioritization thing, and I know from my time here, government doesn't do a very good job in prioritizing things. Risk versus stakes, they don't understand what that means. Anyhow.
Okay. We appreciate the attendance. We appreciate all your thoughts, always do. And we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.